Hi there. Hi, Tim.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, and we are going live for the LinkedIn Live audience as well. So if you want to join us, moving forward, you can always hop into the Zoom, but otherwise we'll be live there and live on YouTube for the replay. So I'm going to start today. We are in day 2, and we are going to be talking all about unique value propositions. So let me share my screen. Oops. All right. Here we go. Okay. All right, it's day 2, and we're going to talk today about the 4 keys to landing your unique value proposition. And I think this is extremely important because the better that we can communicate the value to the marketplace, the more people are going to understand what it is you do, what we have, and why it might, whether it's going to be a fit for them or not. And we really want to focus in on, going back to why we got into business and really what we're trying to accomplish and who we're trying to serve, so that we can bring our strengths and talents to the marketplace and make some impact, make positive impact. And like I said yesterday, there's only about 25% of the companies that are making it. And if you want to be part of that 25% that's going to survive and thrive and really make impact on the community for the human condition and making the world a better place, it's important that we kind of learn how best to present ourselves to the market so that the market can be receptive to the technology, disruptive technology or services that we're bringing to the market. So just a review from yesterday, we talked a little bit about the unique selling proposition, and that we really want to think about the brand that we're bringing to the market. And your brand is really part of the value proposition that you're bringing. It's like whatever you're bringing to the market, whether you know it or not, you're leaving a legacy. Like even in your career, if you think about it, people are going to remember you for certain things. And if you're running your company, your own company, your business, or you're working for an organization, you want to be clear on what that brand is, what do you do well, why you've been in business, and how does this tie into what the customer wants? Because if you really zero in on who you're here to serve, because your talent is needed. You wouldn't have gotten your talent from, divine talent that you have. Every single human being on the planet has divine talents. And when those skills and talents are really honed in and you get mastery around them, there's a need in the world for those talents. And really what you're trying to do is to find that niche or that area where you can really serve and serve powerfully to make an impact. So the more that you can get clarity as we go through this exercise on what it is your brand does really well and what your customer wants and who that customer is that needs it the most, the better off that you'll be. So we talked also yesterday about the fact that when you bring something to market, you want to be thinking about a need in the marketplace and thinking of defining your niche or your vertical market is oftentimes what it's called in business, is a vertical market, that you want to look at both demographics as well as psychographics. So you want to think about that customer profile, from demographics, it's things like, age and gender, race, location, employment status, type of industry that you're in. We're in med tech, so where in med tech and what's the demographic of who would want this product or service. And then the psychographics really come down to things like values. What values do you want to bring to the market, their attitudes, lifestyles, interests. And then their psychographic is basically where they are in, where their mind is set. And are you appealing to that mind to get a mind open to hear new possibilities? Because you'll never be able to get any traction and really land your niche, if you will, and take your, launch your invasion strategy and make it stick if you're not getting people to open up their minds to transitions and something new. And I think that's the biggest, people don't resist change. It's the transition, the psychological transition that has to take place for the change that we're really facing, especially as sales professionals, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to persuade someone to consider a different possibility and way of doing things and help lead them on the path to a transformation that's going to make their, their world, if you will, a better place and make positive impact on them. So it's win-win. So with that background in mind, I always like to draw everyone back, and some of you may have had this in sales training, some maybe not, but there's 5 stages of buyer awareness. And when we really get ourselves grounded in what those are and meeting people where they are, and recognizing where they are when we first meet them, you can be a lot more successful. So the first stage is, problem aware. Something's going on in their world or in their environment that, they're aware that there's a problem. There's always problems to solve. I mean, one of the big things when you're selling to executives in corporate, they're always looking at results. They're looking at, performance of their teams, and they're looking at dealing with any kind of transition that's going on in their company. So there's always problems to solve. And when we're in sales, I mean, that's why we're in sales, and that's what we get paid to do, is to solve problems or serve a need. So, the first stage of your buyers, they're actually aware that there's a problem. But the second stage is that they become aware that there could be a solution to the problem, and they could be starting to look at solutions. So think of, somebody in initiative in a corporate, someone says, why don't you go find out, what some of the solutions to this problem is, and somebody might be delegated down, to take on a project and go gather information. So sometimes people are in this gathering information stage. Purchase aware really is when they have decided that they're going to allocate budget for a product, and they definitely want to pursue making a purchase. So they're considering, there's a lot of considerations that they're making about the purchase. So they've gathered information and they're trying to, sometimes you could run into a committee decision. Sometimes it's, especially in B2B, you find a lot more committee decisions or stakeholders that are involved, that are going to be involved in the decision. If you took the strategic selling, that a lot of times there's a technical buyer, there's a user buyer, there's an economic buyer. So purchase aware of solutions. And then when you think about buyer aware, they have a real intention that they're going to move to buy something. And then the last stage is when they're in that investment mode and they're committed, because they're going to look, they're going to be looking and buyer aware for value. And then they're committed to saying, yes, we're going to do this by the end of the year or whatever the timing is. So I think it's key to think about where your buyer is always first before you're going to communicate any kind of message, so that it's going to resonate and help lead them through their buying process. And if there's any questions, let me know. So let's talk about what we're really selling to. Every time that you're selling to someone, you're selling to a mind. And, I say that, and I don't know if everyone thinks about that a lot of times, but your mind is something that's invisible. So I got taught by Bob Proctor before he passed, and that was a real honor. But he used to use this thing called the stick man to describe the invisible mind. And he said, just picture from the head up. He says, make a big circle and pretend your head is your mind. And he said, there's really two parts to your mind: your conscious mind, which is your logical thinking mind, and then your emotional mind, which is heart-centered. It's like where your soul, body, mind all kind of converge. And your heart-centered mind, your subconscious mind, is running 96% of the show for everyone. And it's where buyers make decisions, right? So we all know that, right? That buyers make decisions based upon their emotions, and then they justify them with logic. Everybody's heard that, right? Raise your hand if you've heard that before. So great. So this is where 96% of the action's going on. And this is where when we're trying to persuade someone, we have to get into and understand someone's emotional mind. And so this invisible mind, is really controlling the behavior. And in this 96% of the programming that runs your daily life, if you think about it, you've got philosophies or beliefs that are in the forefront. Those beliefs cause behaviors, behaviors cause actions, and actions cause reactions. So a lot of times what we have to recognize is that when we meet a client, they're going to have certain beliefs that they're going to have. And sometimes you're going to have to trigger or open their mind to a different belief. So they could have a belief from a past experience that, oh, that'll never work. They could have a belief from just a philosophy of how they do business. So if you're talking to them about maybe some sort of a business, a change in process or something, you could have people resistant because of beliefs. And if you think about, the Pygmalion effect, if on the mind, your mind is really it gets driven by the beliefs that are down in your subconscious mind. And if you're going to persuade somebody to do something different, a lot of times what you have to do is shift their mindset. And if you understand that you're dealing with beliefs and how to get the mind open so that they can consider a different belief, then you're going to be a lot better off. So this is why understanding the psychology of selling, why you do what you do, and why you're doing what you're doing is impactful. Because if you really understand the basic psychology of selling and what you're doing, it makes it a lot easier for you to become authentic and just kind of flow into the process. Where if you don't really understand, or you've been taught to sell when they said, ask this question, do this, and do this process, and you don't have no clue what you're doing, it makes it a lot more difficult. It's why a lot of younger sales reps, when they first come on, kind of sound mechanical and funky. Or, I don't know about you, but when I started, I didn't know what I was just following what they told me to do, and I didn't know and it felt funny. So if you think about the fact that we're dealing with this mind, and the fact that our job is going to be to persuade, some of what I'm going to say is going to start to make sense. But basically, you have a self-fulfilling prophecy, and all of your results are stemming from your ultimate philosophy or belief, which is causing your behaviors, which is causing your actions. Because even in this diagram, the conscious mind is your thinking mind, and your emotional mind is how you behave. And when these two are in alignment, you have congruent vibration. If these two are misaligned, so let's say somebody goes on a sales call and they're talking to someone and they're asking them questions, but they're really not focused on the client. And in their heart, maybe they're thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to make a sale. How am I going to do this, or whatever? That customer is going to pick up a double binding message if your messaging is not congruent in your head and your heart. And they're not going to know why they're going to hesitate or give you an objection, but they will, because we all speak the law of vibration, and we can pick up incongruent vibration. So I'm just starting out with that. Is there any questions from where I am before I go into the next thing? Is this making any sense? We're good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Tim, you're good?
Yeah, what did you mean by incongruent vibrations? Are you
So,
talking about when people just aren't on the same page?
so no, when I say incongruent vibrations, sometimes we say something, but our behavior indicates something else.
Okay.
So that's a double binding message. And people, we all have senses. We all have the sixth sense. Some of us have it high tuned for intuition better than others. But that vibration we're picking up because we all speak the same language. I mean, heck, your dog even speaks the language, right? Like the dog will know if you're mad, if you come home or whatever, it might go hide, or the dog knows it's going to go on the car in a car ride from what's going on. You know what I mean? So there's vibrations going on all the time. And that's some of the things that I talk about in my book, In the Spirit of Selling, is there are these universal laws. And if you start to become aware of those universal laws, and how it applies to selling, it can really help you, because the vibration is what people are buying. Like they buy your energy. When you show up, one of the first things on a sales call that's going to be important is how you show up with your attitude. And your attitude is your thoughts that are up in your conscious mind, your behaviors, and then your actions by your body and what you're doing, your body language, right? And so when those three are aligned and you show up in this powerful vibration and attitude, and you're in a high energy, high vibe thing, people get pulled to you. Likewise, if something's wrong and you're not speaking, but you can feel that somebody's in a lower vibration, a lot of times you can feel repelled from that. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So now we have this that's the invisible part of the mind. Now in the body itself, the body has a brain, and as Napoleon Hill always put it, it's a signaling and a receiving station, right? So it's picking up vibration and it's putting out vibration based upon what you're thinking. And there's this little part down here in the mind called the amygdala. And this amygdala is where the fight or flight response exists. Everybody's familiar with that, or you've heard about fight or flight, right? So a lot of times, whether your subconscious mind is open or not depends upon the state of the amygdala. So that means, are you having a lot of negative emotional feelings, or is your client in a negative emotional state for whatever reason? It has nothing to do with you most of the time. Or are they in their, happy place where they're like receptive and they're open to ideas? And a lot of times, when you meet somebody for the first time, what you're trying to gauge is the vibration you're picking up, and is it congruent? Can I trust this person, or do I feel suspicion about dealing with this person for whatever reason? And so the first thing we want to do is always build trust. But this amygdala really is basically the gatekeeper. So if someone that you try to speak to has a closed mind, you're never going to be able to persuade them. Would you agree?
Yes.
So, and we've all met people with closed minds, right? At least.
I think I married one.
Okay. So
that's great.
And so the mind puts out, your nervous system puts out, like, the dopamine is the happy vibes, right? Where you get all, you could go exercise and whatever, and you can release a lot of endorphins, and that kind of puts you in a positive state. And then there's the stuff that pulls you down. So that, when the serotonin and that's all high, that's great. But then when you get stressed or you think you're under attack, you have more of the negative emotions that are coming, and all that's kind of get regulated in this amygdala. I can't even say that word. So when you meet a client, they're in one of three states. And I like these pictures because it kind of can remind you of this mind thing that you're dealing with. You are selling to a mind. So you can meet someone that looks like the iguana and they're stone faced and they're cold and they're closed, right? And it's nothing personal about you. It's something's going on in their state where they're feeling some sort of negative emotions. And so we have to recognize when we first approach someone, or you're making a statement or trying to communicate to someone, are they in that state of closed mind? Are they in their open state where they're in a happy place, like the Vegas party hat, like woohoo and yeah, and like, hey, how you doing? And oh, nice to meet you. And they're just, they're just open. You've met people like that. Or have they reverted in the buying process to back to their logic state where they're calculating, is this the right decision for me to make? And they're doing pros and cons and thinking about value and, do I do this? And can I justify what yes, I want this, but can I justify it? And the degree of their desire and how they feel here kind of, this is the place where sales are made in the Vegas, and then they're justified. It's emotional. And our job is to really understand how to get a client into that happy state where they're open to receive suggestions so that they can decide and evaluate if they want to accept them and help walk them through their transformation so that they can say yes. So does that help a little bit about thinking about where your customer is and when you're going to communicate, could everybody relate to talking to an iguana like the first time where someone's cold?
Yes, but I agree too, Aranda, what you were saying is how you show up. Even if they're an iguana, you might be able to, based on your energy, strip them down a little bit too, right?
Yeah. Get them out of their negative state and into a positive state and into a state of trust where they may open up or allow your suggestions to go in. So yeah, your energy. The first composite, there's three emotional composites I'll kind of walk you through, but the very, very first composite on any sales call that you're going to make is you want to get yourself in the highest energy state and really zone in on why are you doing what you do? How are you, and really be focused fully on serving the client. Because if you're in that state and it's high energy, you have enthusiasm for your product, you love what you're doing, and you show up with that high, exciting energy, and you really are committed and thinking about how you're going to serve someone powerfully and make impact in their life, yes, they are going to open up. The chances of that, but that energy state is like the first thing that you've got to get straight with you, so you're congruent. And then what you're going to do is you're going to meet your client, and you're going to have to get them in a state of congruency and faith and belief so they can walk across the bridge to their transformation. And so recognizing where they are and having empathy, but also leadership to be able to meet them where they are and then take them through a process that can make a positive impact on them is what you're doing. But in that transition process, you've got to deal with recognizing these three states, and then you're questioning or how you're going to lead them on a path is kind of getting them through the path of the buying process, those 5 stages, and through these emotional states that they're in, so they get in a state of confidence so they can say yes.
Rhonda, if I could just add something that just made me think of when we talk about energy, it's also knowing your audience, because you don't want to be bouncing off the wall with a CEO or a driver. There's different ways to demonstrate your energy based on who you're facing and how you mirror them. Because what's that?
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So, because if you have a decision maker that's shooting straight from the hip, well, you could still bring that energy to the table, but you better make it short and sweet. So it's very dependent on identifying the personality type across from you or on the phone or whatever, and adjusting accordingly, for sure.
Yeah. And it's all part of meeting them where they are and understanding that. Yeah. So I think it was the Miller Hyman training, the versatile sales. So you've got your drivers, you've got the what's the E one? You got the analyticals,
Influencers, like,
yeah, right. And then the sociables, the people who want to make sure that it works for everyone. So yeah, and there's different strategies for that personal salesperson so that you can, but again, it's the same thing, right? Same concept,
yeah.
underlying concept of what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Everything matters by meeting your customer where you are. And I think in today's age, with the amount of, just because of the business cycle that we're in, which is a natural cycle, businesses expand and then they contract. There's a lot of discernment. And so there's a lot of, they're not making decisions. People are not making decisions quite as fast as they were before, unless they're motivated or led in the correct way where they feel that deep, deep connection. And the better that we become at making those deep connections with people on a number of areas, from the mind and from their state of, how do you lead them to their path, the better off you'll be. Cool.
Yep.
All right. So what are those negative emotional states? The negative emotional states, the most common one I think today is people are have way too many distractions, have way too much information, and they're stressed. People just wake up, they're stressed. They're stressed on the highways, they're stressed at work or whatever. And that's one of those times where your brain, the brain that we were talking about, it has a limited amount of energy. What's his name? Story brand marketing. What's his name? Don Miller. He talks about, the messaging has to be succinct because the brain has only so much, especially with the overload of information, the brain has only so much energy and it's conserving it every day. So your brain is basically made to pass judgment on things, sift through things, and only, quickly discern, is this going to help me survive or thrive? And so, you see it in the email boxes, that's happening, where things get sifted out. So you have to recognize if your customer's if they're in a negative emotional state, they're not going to buy. So recognizing what those emotional states are is just as important. So just so you're aware. So you could be dealing with stress. You could be dealing with fear. Maybe they've never made a decision like that before. They have something in their imagination that's, taking them down the path of worst case scenario. So they're what ifing down instead of ifing up. Or maybe they could be in a state of embarrassment. What I'm learning too is that sometimes, I want to give people so much information, but less is more. So you want to give people just enough information so that they can follow along. Sometimes if they get too much information, they can be embarrassed because they just don't understand. So they're not going to tell you. So recognizing those emotional states and being able to shift those is part of the process. And then the big thing is, since everything is made upon a motive, there's a dominant motive for everything. Your questioning strategy in your process, you want to be able to use that to pull out dominant buying motives. Now, what do I mean by motives? Well, motive is what moves people into action, right? It's the emotional state that gets people to move. And there's different motivators for task motives, like for in an organization, especially if you're doing B2B, it's about, the tasks that the company has. So there's motives of what the company's goals are or what your boss or CEO wants to get done. So in healthcare, it could be safety out, things like, safety outcomes, clinical quality, FDA clearance, cost efficiencies, processes in their organization, whatever. The patient experience is becoming a big thing. People are paying attention to that because the better the patient experience for the people we serve, the more customers that they're going to have. And then on the other side of the coin is those individual buyers all have personal motivations. And so, that could be, their advancement. It could be recognition. It could be, this success, what kind of success. It could be, love. It could be fulfillment. It could be connection in the company. It could be the adventure. It could be, all those things, sex, freedom, money, family, all those things are drivers in every human being. And, as the more that we become aware of our own drivers and kind of what drives us, the more we can recognize it in others, because we're all wired the same. But getting to a dominant buying motive is, and understanding that in the sales process is what you're going to use to help lead them across the bridge to, close the sale, because that's the thing that's going to get them to move. And then they're going to have to justify it in logic. So this is just kind of psychology behind it all. And how do we put that together? I think, I did a spirit of selling tip of the week last week on this, but it's real important to think about as you're designing your value proposition, why people what's a true objection, and the rest of it's just excuses. And what's the difference between them? So if you think about true objections, I don't care what you're selling or what your service is, there's only 6 possible reasons that people are not going to buy your product, and it has to do with trust and value. The first ones are, I don't know, some of us, Tim, you might be with me, you probably know what BANT is. I don't know, Stacy, if you do. But budget, authority, need, and timing is an old saying of one of the first things you want to figure out in the selling process. Is this the right customer? Do they have the budget for what I'm delivering? And do they have a need for it? And who needs my product the most, right? Because if there's no budget and there's no need, there's not going to be a sale. That doesn't mean no, never. It just means no, not now, if they don't have the budget or the need. So someone's not going to buy a Rolls Royce if they have a budget for a Volkswagen. Somebody is not, a 6-foot basketball player, 7-foot basketball player that wears size 12 loafers is not going to buy a pair of Jimmy Choo heels for a woman, right? I mean, so fit is fit, right? So you have to make sure that you really understand who needs your product that you're selling. The other 4 objections are, when we give people too much information and they get confused or embarrassed that they don't understand it, they won't buy. When we give people, when it's too much effort to make the change. So that's basically when we compete against a status quo. So if your service or product is not going to, you haven't demonstrated the value that it's going to be worth the effort to move, then they're probably going to stay the same. That's an objection. And then ROI is different from budget. So ROI tells us, as far as feedback, that we haven't come up with a value proposition that makes financial sense. So, you could think of, I'll just use an example of operational excellence. So if you're running a laboratory or something, and your product that you're offering them, maybe solves one problem, but it becomes all of a sudden the highest cost driver in the process, and it doesn't make sense for the return, for the value, then someone's going to say no. So you always want to make sure that whatever you're selling and you're presenting in your value statement, which we'll talk about, I think on tomorrow, Thursday, is going to have a higher use value than the monetary value you're asking for the customer. And then the last one is what we talked about at the beginning of the call, which is belief. Sometimes people just do not believe. And what you want to do is you want to have the attitude and the conviction in what you're doing to hold belief and allow people to walk across the bridge to their transformation based upon your belief. And that's why conviction is so important. It's why you want to love what you do what you love, be in an environment where you're going to be in that state of belief and conviction, and thinking about the big why behind what you're doing.
Yeah, I think on this one, it's so complex in medical as compared to someone who's selling a consumer product, because I use the example, if you're selling into a hospital and you've got, say it's a capital product that nurses use. Your user is the nursing group, the person who you have to sell on the benefits may be the CNO, because she's got to put it in a capital budget. It goes into the CFO of capital rolled up projects, and he takes it to the CEO for capital projects. So you have 4 buyers in this, and then you may throw in, well, then it goes back to the purchasing group, which maybe is it in a GPO, and each one of those you'll talk about value prop has a different value proposition.
Mhm.
And that's where I think, in medical specifically, that, a young salesperson can get all the excitement generated in a user and be all excited and put in a forecast and do everything that gets them confused, but they haven't worked the entire sales process. And I don't think it's unique to medical, but I think medical has its own dynamics that make it more complex, and it's got even more complex, even with physicians who had the ability, 20 years ago to just say, I want this device in here, and they got it. Now they have to threaten to leave and take patients to the CEO to get a exemption from a GP. I mean, it's so a good salesperson understands that the person who eats a cereal isn't the one who buys it and isn't the one who pays for it.
That's a really good point. Very true. And I think it's why today, having those business acumen sales, and again, thinking about all the people you have to convince, and then what are the value propositions, and most important, how do you frame it, right? Frame it up in that way. It does take strategy and mindset to navigate that. It's not a peanut butter spread, no way. I mean, and you could have that situation in 2 different hospital settings, and 2 different scenarios could probably come out of it from the same, based on, you said one has a GPO, the other one, no, or, all of that stuff. So it's really important to understand deep understanding and deep intimacy with the client base to understand now what is the goal, and how does this fit in, and how does this create a win-win? Very good. But I think this is the point where the why is you're in business is so important. And I think because at the end of this, we're going to write, do the value proposition exercise for homework tonight. But I think you really want to come back always to the why, because at the end of the day, it's your passions that are going to drive you up, just to be able to slug through, to be able to come out on top. Like every ride has a dip. Every endeavor that you do is always going to require a certain amount of climbing through a dip. And Seth Godin, anybody read Seth Godin's The Dip? It's a great book if you haven't read it. So Seth Godin talks about dips, and he says that, today, especially, your people search for the best, right? If you go look for a restaurant, you don't say, give me the 10 mediocre restaurants, right? You want the best. And when when I was given the analogy yesterday, even about the Walkman, about knowing when to quit and when to lean into something, to make it work, to get across the chasm that we talked about, it does take effort. It's going to take, there's going to be challenges, and the obstacle is going to be the way. But what will help you get through that obstacle or that challenge, which is going to grow you somehow or teach you some lesson or whatever it is, always comes back to the passion. Because if you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, like your why is bigger than your why not, you'll be able to that passion will give you a second gear that you didn't know you had, and you'll just keep slugging, right? And you'll get through to the other side. So I think it's imperative that for every business value proposition, when you're working through it, whether you're an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur, you've got to sit with the business owner and really make sure that you understand, why are we in business? And what is that tie back to that passion that's going to fuel us to just keep, slugging away? The second thing for a value proposition that you really want to look at is really, what is your strength, your gift, and your talent that you do in your own special way that's unique? Because I can tell you this, every single person on the planet has it. We all have divinity within us. We've all been given this special talent. And if you really decide that you're going to become the best at that talent, and you get clear with who needs that talent that you have, and you decide to become the best and take it to market and make impact with it, that's going to give you that's going to tell you what to say yes to and what to say no to. But you're going to find your place. You're going to be able to carve out your niche, your for your invasion strategy. There's plenty of business for everyone if you're in the right area. If you're trying to stand out instead of stand in or fit in, that's a better place to be, because you've really got to think about your strengths. But when we leverage those strengths and meet the world's needs for what we have to give, we get the greatest sense of fulfillment in our work. So, you got to think about, as you write a value proposition, who are you really here to serve? Who most needs your knowledge, your expertise, your special sauce, your special unique strengths? Because you wouldn't have them if there wasn't a need for it. The world needs it somewhere. We're all here to serve. So who are you here to serve? And the clearer you get on that, the better off you're going to be. And then how comes, how you do what you do is a reflection of your values and how you demonstrate evidence and support the claim of your solution. And that, you want to be able to make a clear statement about that. So it always comes back to, why, what, who, and how. And if you're really, really clear on that, and you're passionate about something, you know what your strength is, you play to your strength, and you manage your weakness. You don't try to be everything to everybody. You don't have, and of course you're going to have imposter syndrome sometimes when you're going through these things, or you're starting something new, because you're growing and it's a new thing. So I think it's a difference of recognizing, am I just feeling this imposter syndrome just because it's something new? Or am I trying to be everything to everybody and putting a mask on and not really being authentically me? I think those are two different things. So the more clear you get to stand in your place, and when you show up with your attitude and your authenticity, and you unmask the real you, and really work on your strengths, and really come to the marketplace with a heart to serve others, that's going to draw people in. That's the magnetism that's going to draw people in. And that has to be reflected also in the way you communicate with your audience and meet them where they are. So what are the 4 keys to a unique value proposition? The thing you want to understand for your product is, what is the problem that you solve so powerfully that's not being solved today? And because if you really, really get that, if you become best in class in your specific niche, your specific vertical, you will become the go-to solution. You will stand out, as opposed to trying to fit in. So the biggest thing to do, this is kind of like an internal working for whether you're an intrapreneur or entrepreneur, is for your business. What does this business do in the most unique way that's not being done in the market? You hook onto that, you start to carve your niche, you start to carve your vertical market, and you're going to want to make a claim about that in your statement. You do want to differentiate yourself. So, a common phrase that you can use when you're speaking to clients is, unlike other alternatives, this is what we do, and this is, you sell to the what and the why. this is what we do, and this is why we do that. Why do you do that? Because you've got an emotional and conscious mind. So you want to get that congruence. If you remember from the beginning when I was talking about, you want to get the client congruent. This is what we do. That's the head part, the top of the mind. And then why we do it goes into the emotion. And you've got to be selling to both. Then you've got to speak in that psychographic language of your ideal avatar. So if you think about the technology adoption scale cycle, the product cycle that we talked about, you want to think about what is that psychographic of that person towards tech, and how do I speak to that person to put that person at ease and to get them to be receptive to open up to some other possibilities and new ideas. And then, by doing that, you're really going to become that go-to expert. Your expertise is going to start to shine, because when you start speaking in their language and saying, so what you're saying is, this is a problem for you, and these are the implications it's causing. And, fixing this is not only going to help you personally, but it's going to impact these people, and this people, or whatever. Then the client's going to, so if you did that due diligence discovery and you really dug down deep and you got down to the dominant buying motives, and you're able to articulate exactly back to them exactly what they said, not what you want them to say, so we don't want to go down assumption alley and be saying things that would turn them off. But if you literally, really, really actively listen to the client and say it back to them exactly as they said it, they're going to say, oh my gosh, he gets me or she gets me. And then that trust and that openness to be able to open up that mind is going to open up. Because when you have a closed mind, if you want to write this down, there's only 3 ways that you're going to get that mind open. One is agreement. That's the easiest. That's why you want to ask questions where people say yes. But so agreement is one. Fascination. So when you tell them something that fascinates them, that'll open up their mind. Or shock. Sometimes you have to give somebody like a shock to get them to see something differently. And you have to have conviction and belief in your product that you're willing to do that. So it's fascination, agreement, and shock is going to help open up that mind. But when that mind is open, now you're with your value proposition, you want to be, activating their imagination about what a new day and, what their life is in a new day. Because you want to, now they're in their party hat, right? It's open and they're receptive to ideas and suggestions. And so when those suggestions are coming in, you want to activate, the emotions and go back to that dominating buying motive to get them to, to lead them to say yes. And in the process, you've got to be creating belief, because they're going to need to, at the end, get through that calculator and trust themselves enough to walk across that bridge. So 4 keys, you've got to know what's the problem you solve, who's your ideal client, how you're going to differentiate yourself from what's out there, speak the language of the client, and then you become the go-to expert. So tonight's activity that you can do, and you're going to get an email with this too, is think about where you are on the technology adoption cycle and how you are going to speak to people differently and meet them where they are with a unique value proposition. So, for example, yesterday we talked about, you have innovators, the tech enthusiasts that are going to welcome you. These could be when you start into a new business, some of your closest clients that are just going to buy from you because they trust you. You've got visionaries. These are leaders in the industry that you can get advice from, that can help you really direct some of your efforts on, and make, they would like, if they really believe that you're going to make impact on their community and support their values, they're going to be likely to say yes. These people, like you said, Stacy, about the, meeting somebody, whether they're drivers, a lot of the visionaries are more of these driver personalities, where they're going to, they like to keep it short, sweet, tell you, their time, etc. But then when you get into the pragmatist, you're going to have more safety concerns, because they want, moderate changes, but they don't want to have any high risk. And then, this whole product solution stuff really becomes important here. So who are you going to partner with? And then the skeptics, like I said, are usually the last, that may adopt out of fear of missing out, or, more of a, how instead of the carrot, you wouldn't talk to them with the carrot, but you talk to them about, some of the dangers that they might be in that state. So any questions? For the day? How are we doing? How was that? Did you have any takeaways?
I think, it's just, Brenda knows this all too well with me. It starts with a good attitude, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's just keep it real. So
Yeah.
I wanted to pull up, I have my other sales training book. We call it, I see some alignment with, we called it in Sandler, the success triangle, which is your attitude drives your behavior, which drives your technique. So, I mean, attitude is everything.
It really is, especially.
I mean, and just dumb it down. I mean, but all this, and I also kind of just really have an appreciation for your approaches that you have taken, especially with like yesterday.
Mhm.
What it takes to take a company with some innovation and the strategies involved in it. It's just very powerful. Yeah,
And the more
it's
belief,
amazing.
the more belief the whole company has in what they're doing and why, that's going to create a lot of momentum and teamwork and things. Because if you're all behind like a passion, it's powerful,
Right. And exciting as well, which then in turn, with that excitement, increases energy vibrations also. I know I felt it this weekend. I'm just saying. Right?
Yeah, good. Tim, any thoughts?
No, I thought it was good. I mean, it characterizes a lot of the things that sometimes you think and it's good to rehear and learn some things. If I have to say one thing that is occurring, one of the dynamics I think is that the education part of in healthcare, but it's in everything. That the sales part of educating has become so less important because they oftentimes with the web and everything else, they can get that information. And I'll use the analogy not only in sales but in like car buying. The consumer knows more than the sales rep because he's found the one car, or she's found the one car, and they do all the research and come in there, and they know more than the sales rep if they were really interested. And the same has become true of in medical sales, that the oftentimes, especially in more clinical sales, the sales rep was considered the expert, and often they would the clinician, whether it be a doctor or a nurse or whoever, learn from the sales rep, and that was their education. And the first person oftentimes set the standard, and it was harder to change somebody's mind because somebody got there 2 hours earlier and set them up. It's not as true now that the focus of your reps to educate, kind of that first part where you educate them on the problem. I mean, it becomes more the lower. I'm speaking more to healthcare, and I like the way you kind of you talk about the progression of identifying the problem. You've got to do that quick. If you don't do that compellingly, and I also like your stuff about being getting them open, and we've all walked into the rooms where you're like, can we start over? I didn't even see anything yet. I don't know who you just got off the phone with, but converting them into just the psychological effect where they're actually listening. Because how often do you don't have 2 minutes because you just popped in and they're already in a bad mood, and you've got to get them on a good mood or get get them in a good mood, and all those things are the basis of what you talked about, I guess, is as I try and land this airplane. I thought it was really good. It's good for the content has been rich for both trainers as well as, I believe, salespeople. You know, to it's good to read. You know, I read somewhere that ABC, you know, it doesn't stand for always be closing; it stands for always be coaching.
Yeah.
Salespeople need to hear this stuff over and over and over again. So I'll
Yeah.
leave it at that, since you can close it the last 4 minutes.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. The emotional intelligence and having empathy and really truly listening to customers is what they really, really are yearning for now. Acknowledged and validated and heard. Because like you said, Tim, the information is just, it's overload. It's not about the information anymore. It's the relationships.
It is. And you've got to be able to have multiple relationships within the dynamics of a hospital today. I mean,
Oh yeah.
You can't sell to one person. No one person has the ability to make a decision. It's even at the user level, they have a process where there are groups that make the input, and then your competition, when you're, especially as the ticket price goes up, is your competition becomes everybody who's fighting for dollars. That's it's true in all markets, but it's really become true in healthcare because everybody's innovating and such. So no, I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. Your content.
Awesome. All right, thanks. We will see you guys tomorrow, and I will get the videos out, the link to the YouTube, so if you miss anything or if you're going to be out, you'll have those to watch and catch up on. Okay?
Great. Thanks. Nice meeting you, Stacy.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow.